Rose McIver plays Sam in the CBS comedy hit Ghosts. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, and I wanted to start off, Rose, by asking you, what did you find most scary about Ghosts?
The real ghosts or the show that we made?
The show that you made.
The show that we made, the scariest thing was, I mean, to be honest, like shooting in a pandemic and kind of at any given moment being like, are we going to get through another day? Are we going to get through another day? Is everybody still safe and good? That was like a genuine fear that was kind of going through us a lot of the time. There weren't too many like supernatural, eerie kind of things that happened for me while I was up there. So no sort of spooky stuff for me on set.
That's fair enough. What was the biggest going from the biggest fear? What was the biggest joy of Ghosts?
Biggest joy is the people I got to work with. It's an amazing ensemble. I mean, there's 10 cast that are there all the time, and it very much is starting to feel like a big extended family. And we also have this amazing crew in Montreal, and everybody felt like they connected pretty intensely in the last year. So yeah, being with them and being able to kind of bounce ideas off everybody, it's like it very much feels like a team sport.
Yeah. How do you with a big ensemble comedy like this, a lot of it is about not just the things you do, but how you set others up and how you serve each other in the ensemble. How does that dynamic work, and what are you conscious of in terms of the other cast members when you're approaching one of those big group scenes in particular?
That's such an astute observation. That is so much of what works in a show like this, is when you're all listening to each other, and really your emphasis is on trying to make the rest of the group look good. And if everybody's doing that all the time, everybody ends up looking good, and the comedy sings and it makes sense and the heart comes through. So I feel like listening is the biggest skill, especially in a 10-person group. It's like the more that you can really truly be listening to what everybody is giving you in the moment, the tighter the whole thing is, and the funnier and the more integrity it has. We're so lucky with the scripts we have these incredible bones to work from, and anything we get to add on top is just it's just like the sweetener.
Can you think of like is there someone like, and I'm sure it's everyone, but like, can you think of someone particularly on the cast which does like make you and the others look particularly good?
I think Richie has an incredible skill set. Richie Moriarity, who plays Pete, has an amazing skill set at supporting whatever you bring. Like, there really is, I feel like no matter how weird you go with your offer, he gets behind you. And everybody does to a certain extent, but I think that's one of his particularly strong suits, is knowing how to make everybody around him shine. And it's a total gift. And he's not, somebody who is naturally as funny and gifted as he is. It's nice that that's not his preoccupation at all. It seems to very much be about like how to pass the ball.
Some of the people in your cast, like Brandon, for example, and some of your guest stars too, like Matt Walsh, Rob Hubel, have like pretty extensive improv backgrounds. And like, from speaking with a couple of the guys on the show, it seems like there's opportunities for you guys to sort of stick to the script, but also play around and make your own offers and ideas in the process of putting the show together. Are you a big improviser, Rose?
So I have done lots of improv in shows over the years, just tiny little moments, peppered in tiny little moments. And they're always, there's a lot of the work done where the character is very much set up for me. I know what the intention is in the scene. I know what I'm trying to get. There's a framework that you can work on even when you're improvising. But I had never done UCB or Second City or Groundlings or any of that training that those guys had done. So actually this hiatus, I have been doing UCB online, which is so much fun, because I really wanted a sense of what that feels like, the free falling and the freedom when you have no idea where it's going to go, where you don't have the script to work off, where you don't have a character in mind. And you're really just trusting your impulse. So that's been like super helpful for me to actually understand how a lot of the other players work, like where they come from. It's not necessarily that always translates exactly to how things work on set. It's a pretty different sort of skill set, but it's so helpful and informative and frees things up and just gives me an appreciation for the people I'm working with, even on an even deeper level.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And do you like, did you improvise anything in season one? Was there anything?
I did. I'm trying to think. God, it's it's such a giant. It's 18 episodes. They all sort of bleed together a little bit in my brain. I think I remember like playing around with some offers, even in the pilot, where I remember. I'm not naturally a toilet humor kind of person. That's not really where my brain goes. But when Utkarsh was commenting on the smell, I think I remember mentioning something about a juice cleanse or throwing some joke to him about like a moment like that will pop into my brain. But yeah, that was probably the source of the juice cleanse I'd been on, something like that.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And we've got so you're doing the UCB online. What's the big thing you've learned from that course?
Oh, for me, it's been really helpful. Actually, I'm a very, very amateur writer. I'm like learning to write, and I'm trying to do a little bit more of that. And the trusting your impulse thing has been very, very helpful. Again, where without the guide work of an incredible script to play with, or a character to jump from, it's like, well, what about when it's just you? What about when you're not given anything and it's just you and your scene partner, and you're just figuring it out as you go? And that's been, it's just a good confidence builder for me to kind of understand what happens when you just commit to your first instinct and roll with that. So that's been really fun, really informative and challenging. And I have a wonderful teacher called Mike Leffingwell, who I'm a huge fan of.
Oh, nice. I a couple of years ago in LA, I did one of the UCB courses.
Yeah. How did you find it?
It was great. Yeah. It's like some really great things, not just for like comedy necessarily, but also just for listening to people and supporting people. Like obviously the comedy is a big part of it too, and sort of also just the way you think about things. So if something's true, what else is true, and broadening ideas and seeing where things go. So I thought it was great.
Finding a lot of meat on the bone. I like that description he uses quite a lot of. What else? Yeah. What's the other meat on the bone? What can we pull off this? Like that's a nice, been really good for that.
Oh no, that's fantastic. I was going to grab my handbook, but it's
mine's upstairs. My little study corner. It's also fun just to be really purely silly and joyful and fail safely in an environment where, if I fail on set, sure, but it's going to end up on national television in front of millions of people. And there's just a different stakes to that. You still put yourself in a vulnerable position, but you're aware of that. Whereas when you're in a classroom, it's really just the environment to learn and purely for learning. And that's really freeing.
Yeah. But I imagine at the same time on Ghost, like you do need to be comfortable enough with the people that they will have your backs, even if you say something that's wrong and things like that, and having that culture. So the interesting thing for Sam on the show is she is living, but she can see and hear the ghosts, which is pretty unique in terms of the character of the show. Who knows who's going to pop up in season 2 and things, but so is it so that means, from what I understand, you have to do some scenes where no one's in the room because for shots with Utkarsh and things like that, but then you also need to do the same scenes with all the ghosts in the room for different shots and coverage and all that sort of thing. So do you find it easier to do your lines with all the ghosts there, or easier to do it when they're all gone?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unique show in that sense, where you shoot with everybody and then you have to memorize everybody's positions and maybe some of the deliveries you got, because often the cast is super generous and like try to hover nearby and get call from off, but sometimes they have to go back and change or do other things, not changing very often, but leave sometimes. But I definitely have to try and kind of map out in my brain pretty fast what their intentions were, what sort of ish tone they were trying to play things in, so that I can hopefully be serving that when they're not actually there. It requires a lot of focus. It's very fun and it's such a gift, but it's a lot of spinning plates. And so it's quite interesting for a show where there's a lot of the ball in the air and people laughing, and it's very fun and very silly in lots of ways, but I can't drop it really, or we really lose any of the basic logic that we're trying to hold on to, which is that these people were here and now they're not. And so it's weirdly more technical than you would expect a sitcom to be, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like, because Danielle wanted me to ask you that question when I spoke with her the other day. I think she wanted to know if you wanted to, like, if you prefer, she was curious if you preferred the scenes when she was around or when she
Oh no,
wasn't.
it's much better when they're there, infinitely better, because you have people you're reacting to. Otherwise, when they're not there, yeah, it's like the joy in acting is reacting for me. So it's always like, if I'm being given something from somebody else, it's why it's never fun to act to a tennis ball when people have to do big CGI shoots and things like that. It's really like you want to feel the push and pull between yourself and the other actors. So infinitely better when they're there, but maybe a little quieter when they're not.
That's fair. Another member of your cast wanted me to ask you a question, and they wanted me to ask you, like, technically, how do you approach to speak to an empty room that's full of people?
It's a lot like an audition. It's a lot like when you do a weird audition in some little back room in Burbank, and in the scene there's 10 characters and you've got one casting director you're reading with, and you're having to kind of visualize where other people might be, and you really create that internal landscape. It's what my acting teacher always talks about, is like create that space that's not there as if it were there, because on the day it will be, right? When you go to film the movie. The difference with this show is on the day it's still not there. So you're still recreating and pretending that that person's just fallen in front of you, and that person's kind of giving that person a side eye and whatever it might be. So it's just kind of using, thank God I've had so many auditions over the years. It's using a lot of that skill set.
Yeah. Can you think of, can you guess who from the cast wanted me to ask you that question?
Oh God, that felt too earnest. I thought you were going to throw me something. I expected them to be ribbing me.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was hoping for.
Earnest, earnest. Then I'm thinking sweet, kind. Could it be Rahman?
No, it was Utkarsh.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Wait. Wow. Well, that's because he plays it all without them there. I mean, he has a real heavy lifting load to do where he works with no other actors. It's like just one person, and he's got to fill the space still and do so much with it. So that's really challenging. But he doesn't have to visually map out where the people are, right? So
yeah. Like, how do you remember where you were looking when the ghosts were there and stuff?
I mean, I just it's really just like remembering lines or doing anything else. It's like you just kind of go eyeball where that person was, eyeball where that person was. Like it's just, thank God my memory is not horrific, because that would be a really hard part of this job, I think.
Yeah. And like, there is a range, like actors, right? Like some actors are much better at memorizing lines than others and things. So are you at the more like, you've got a better memory for stuff like that?
I'm quite technical. I think I'm quite a technical actor. I wish I were like just cool and free and just like, but I've grown up on set, and I have spent years and years understanding what the rest of the crew are needing from me in order to do their jobs well and make them shine, hopefully. So it's like, I might be really caught up in the moment, but if I go staggering off out of my light and block somebody else and the boom can't hear me, it's useless. And I guess I bring that philosophy a little bit to work with other actors in the scene, is like, how can I try to be as free as I can and still serve all of the technical elements that make the show come together? I think that's probably something that, I just spend a lot of time trying to get right.
Yeah. So really your life and propensities have like led you to ghosts. Like you're perfectly like for this role. It's like aligned very
I'm kind of like a little trained dog quite a lot. Like if there's a mark on the ground, I will find it. And I'm bad if they're like, don't worry about the mark. I'm like, well, then you've got to take the mark away, because if it's there, I'm going to end up on that mark. Like I am sort of like a little Tux Wonder dog, like a little trained best in show dog.
Yeah. Did you so we talked a bit about like the technical aspect of playing Sam, but what about the character stuff of playing Sam? Like how do you sort of approach her from a character perspective, and what's her driver?
I really love Sam. I am understanding her so much more as we go as well. This always happens in the first season of a show. You're kind of figuring it out, and the writers are gifting you these different episodes where you get insight into who somebody is and where they're from. And so I've really spent this first season getting my head around her and working out who she is. I always knew she was very accommodating. That was the word that I kind of brought into it, was like, it's a show about accommodation and they're setting up a B&B, but she's also trying to bring together a whole lot of people who think very differently. And she's kind of like the coordinator in so many ways. She's camp counselor. She's like, trying to get things to happen as smoothly as possible, make sure people feel heard and respected, but also kind of get what she wants to. And ultimately, achieve this kind of outrageous dream that she has. So yeah, throughout the course of the show, I've started to understand more and more about who she is. And I think, you know, she has such a longing to fit in. She really, really wants to belong. She doesn't feel that set up in her own family dynamic. We haven't explored her dad yet, but we understand that she and her mother had a fairly fraught relationship. And I think, you know, she wasn't a cool girl at school, and she wants to be liked. And there's a lot of that I'm trying to bring into her, and a lot that I can understand. I mean, I'm an actor. I'm dying to be liked all the time. That's what we do. So I get that kind of like urge for approval, and I understand her in that way a lot. And I think a lot of her humor like is growing more and more from that. It's to me like she's a little bit sort of slightly misfit in her generation in some ways. And so she kind of, I guess we just see nice moments of that. She has the most incredibly supportive, amazing husband who I like how Utkarsh describes it sometimes, where he says his superpower is unconditional love. Like, you know, if there's all these ghosts who have these powers, that's his, is just like, really, I mean, I've never heard of anybody stepping up the way he does. And it makes me really believe in them as a couple and want this crazy dream to work out for them, despite all the challenges.
Yeah, Sam is in some ways one of the sort of the straight characters of the show, with all these crazy ghosts bouncing around her. And you touched on this a little bit, but what is the funniest thing about Sam?
Yeah, I think she's got some major control issues. She's got some inability to take her hands off the driver's wheel. And I think that served her really well in lots of ways. That's the reason they're out living in this crazy place and achieving these things. You know, she's a real engine, but at the same time, she needs to learn how to chill. And I think that kind of trying to be both things, like trying to be somebody who's cool and fits in with like a propensity to like really control. And I think she controls from a very well-meaning place. I truly do. I think she really wants it to work out, wants everybody to be okay, but she doesn't realize that she's getting in her own way sometimes when she's doing that.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, it's also like so funny that she seems to get on better with the ghosts than living people. These like this band of misfit ghosts.
Yeah.
She how well she connects and
well, I think she really likes that they need her too. You know, she likes to feel needed, Sam.
Yeah. Did you have was there a particular moment that you thought was particularly funny this season?
I just loved the prom episode for so many reasons. For me, from a humor standpoint, I thought that was a nice moment where we get to see Sam. We got to see some relationships that kind of push her into being the oddball, which is really fun. And again, yeah, she's mainly a pretty grounded character in this show. So that was a nice opportunity to kind of dig into her a little. I also just thought it was so sweet and romantic, and I always find things funnier when there is heart that it lands with, or there's a lot of integrity behind it. And I thought the whole episode was strong for everyone in that regard. Yeah.
Ghosts is a show in a lot of ways where by all these ghosts and living people meeting each other, they change and they grow, like they're able to get to a place differently to where they would have if they'd never encountered each other. What's something, Rose, you've learnt from meeting all these actors and crew on the show, like coming together in the experience of making ghosts? How have you grown or changed through that?
I think it's been such an unusual time to connect with a group of 10 people. And there's an incredible large crew as well that I'm not meaning to ignore when I say that. I just mean there's a bond that is happening between the cast on this show that we really went into it. We had our table read 3 days before the pandemic hit in full force. And, you know, this country, the US, shut down. And so we had this very unusually long period of time before we actually ended up on day one of being picked up to production in Montreal. So we had this like full year basically where everybody started to get to know each other. And I think I always love as much of real life as you can bring to work as possible. It just makes the job so much easier. Like rather than transforming and stepping out of Rose, it's like, how much of Rose can I get away with in Sam? And I think with this cast, there has been a lot of like the true connections that we have built over this year have made the job so much easier, so much funnier. It's made everybody understand each other a little more. With 10 people, it really does ask you to know how to communicate with different people different ways, because something that might land with that person isn't necessarily the inroad with that person. And I think just that, like, the building of camaraderie and how much we are letting that bleed into this show, I think is part of the magic and the chemistry that is working on Ghosts.
Well, Rose, thank you so much for talking to us today. All the best of luck with the upcoming Emmy Awards, and people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to watch other interviews with awards contenders and other ghost contenders as well.
Woohoo! Thank you
There you
so
go.
much, man. I really appreciate you chatting.